Tash South is a South African-born graphic designer who 4 years ago created an Instagram account to document her home renovation. Fast forward to current day, and along with a slurry of DMs about her design process, these enquiries then converted into design jobs, from which she founded her newest thriving business, South Place Studio. Welcome to the Designerati podcast, Tash.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Lovely to meet you. Now, you're part of a group, aren't you, with Laura and Gabrielle? What's it called?
Yes, it's called Siren Sister.
So we're very excited to welcome you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So as part of the process, we start with a bit of an icebreaker.
Yes.
So it's designed to give people a little bit of a flavour as to who you are, and maybe something they wouldn't typically associate with you. What have you brought along?
Okay, well, I've actually brought along one of my prints from my boutique collection that is being sold at Rockett St George. And the reason I brought this is because...
which way up is it? Is that a silly question? It is a silly question.
It's that way up, yes.
Perfect.
So the reason I brought this is because actually not many people know that I'm South African or from Africa the first time they meet me, and I think that's because I've lost my accent over the years, and also it shows my kind of graphic design background, so not many people know that I've transitioned from graphic design into the renovations and interiors world, so that's why I picked that to bring today.
Absolutely beautiful, and it's not everybody that can say they have a gorgeous art line under their belt.
Yes, I guess so, and yes, hoping to extend it all, but it's 4 pieces for now.
Hold that thought, because we're going to talk about that in more detail soon. So you're South African originally. You were born in Cape Town.
I was.
Lekker, bro.
Yes.
I was married to a South African.
You are?
Well, I was.
You was.
It was.
You were. Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful part of the world.
So you're first generation?
Yes. I lived there until I was my early 20s. So I think I was 21 or 22 when I came over to the UK.
And how did you find it? Growing up in South Africa?
It was interesting. I had quite unusual childhood because the apartheid regime was still there. It still existed when I was growing up, and all through until I was about 12 or 13 years old.
And that impacts you when you're applying for a job, I'm assuming, the apartheid?
Well, it affected my parents and their parents more, really. It was basically racial division within the country. So it affected our lives in many, many ways. I mean,
how so?
So where you could live, it was all kind of racially divided. And, some people were even taken out of certain areas because they were deemed too good for them. And that's how kind of all some of the townships started up. And so it was a very unusual childhood. It was quite harsh in a way. You how do your parents protect you or shield you from this kind of country you're living in where everything is so literally black and white? So that was we were very aware of it. It wasn't something our parents could hide from us.
And how was it being a child growing up in South Africa? My experience of South Africa is the nature is beyond spectacular.
I mean, it was great. Cape Town's beautiful. We lived close to the beach, so we had kind of the beach lifestyle growing up, which was, amazing when you become a teenager, learn to drive, going out with your friends, having beach days. So that was really something that I hold really close to my heart, is those years before I came over here when, you're just kind of just old enough to kind of have some independence and enjoy all of those things that the city had to offer.
And I wonder how it feels as a human growing up, with the evident challenges that apartheid brings, and trying to create, a healthy emotional infrastructure, I guess.
Yes, it's difficult. I mean, growing up where basically everything around you reminds you that you're not good enough or you're not as good as this person with a paler skin, but you're slightly better than this person with a darker skin, because that is what you were exposed to all the time. So it's hard to ignore that. And, you know, growing up that way, there's always that thing in your mind about you're not good enough. It affects your confidence. So almost every situation you go into life, whether it be a job interview or whatever, there's always that obstacle, what I see or what I think people of colour see as an obstacle in your mind about, you know, that is the first thing I need to overcome is I'm brown. Will that affect my chances here? So that's quite difficult. And, you know, as we get older and the world changes, that obviously becomes easier, but that it's always there.
And I can't even imagine how that feels. You know, when you consider that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, our basic needs are food, shelter, connection, and then you have to add on another layer, which is what I hear you saying. You know, the colour of my skin makes me not fit in.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. It was tricky. The time it got most tricky was when the year I changed from primary school to high school. That was only the second year that that schools were allowed to be mixed in terms of colour. So I went fresh out of primary school, you know, a brown only primary school, into what was previously a white only high school. So, and you know, I was quite a shy child. I was like painfully shy, and to have to deal with not only moving from primary school to high school, but then also to have this huge added you know, thing and pressure of going to a high school where people like me had only just been going, just a few of us, for 1 year previously. So that was quite scary, like for a young,
because you were going to be judged,
12-year-old girl. Yeah, so that was quite scary. It was okay. We worked it out. You had to. And I made really good friends of, you know, all colours. And so it almost gets to the point where, like, why could it just not have been like this the whole time?
But one of the many things that I admire about you, Tash, is when I'm reading about your career, you've managed to create a large, successful business and career. And what I'm imagining is, you know, some of the qualities, the personality traits you need are resilience, courage, confidence. And I'm wondering if the negative aspects of what you experienced as a child have actually seen you in a good stead.
No, you're exactly right there. I think when you have to have this extra kind of layer, this extra hard skin to kind of deal with something like that, it does kind of carry you through a bit. It's kind of, and I think, you know, loads of people of colour would say this, is that you're always, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you're always looking to prove yourself a bit more, to show, like from my background, it was like, oh, let me show that I can be good as well. Let me show that I can be better even, maybe. Let me, you know. So that is definitely a part of it. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And then also just, you know, the kind of, I guess the kind of scrappiness of growing up. And, you know, I wasn't from a wealthy family. We were kind of, you know, relegated to certain areas that you could live. So that ambition of trying to just move on a bit, to maybe get something a bit better for yourself or for your family, that's always been kind of a motivation. And yeah, I guess just seeing how, you know, my dad owned his own business as well. And just seeing how you had to just kind of be scrappy, and you kind of had to make ways of getting to things you wanted to get to, and you had to find ways around things or ask people you knew to help you out, and you would help them out. And, you know, if you had some skills that you could use, maybe you could use them in a different way to kind of keep moving forward or to achieve something. So I guess I've always had that about me as well.
Creativity. resilience, resourcefulness. If there was one thing you would tell your younger self, or a little girl or a little boy in your position who didn't feel good enough as an adult now, what would you share with them?
I guess I would say the same thing my mum said to me. She'd just be like, you're good enough, you're better. Like, and she didn't know it was better. she didn't know it was, but she obviously knew that was the right thing to say. Is like, you can be better than that. Just because this whole country is telling you you're not, doesn't mean that you're not. You can be better.
I mean, it just seems so incomprehensible that the colour of skin, is a force to be discriminated against in terms of, for me, we are hearts, we are souls, we are beings, and we are equal, completely equal. And I just cannot imagine you had to go through something like that.
Well, I mean, it's strange, isn't it? It's how I grew up, and I didn't know any different. So it's just the way it was, and I would never claim that it's affected me so badly. And, you never want something like that to define you as a person. And especially when I know my parents and their parents went through so much worse of it all. They experienced the worst of it, and at least it ended. But, some people are still shocked to find out that someone of my age had experienced that extreme kind of racism in their country up until really very recently. So, lots of people I speak to don't really even know that it was that harsh that recently.
I mean, I was married to a South African, and I didn't have a white South African. I didn't have any indication of that experience that was going on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
And here we are. And now you have. So you trained as a graphic designer in South Africa.
I did, yes.
And you did that for 16 years. Why?
Yeah.
How?
So I studied in Cape Town. I actually studied advertising and design. So I, the first year was kind of an overall course, and then you kind of chose what you thought. We did photography, we did copywriting.
Why did you get into that?
Graphic design.
Just step back one little bit. So Tash is in South Africa and thinks, right, okay, I can do anything I want. My mum's told me to believe in myself. And why would you choose advertising and design?
How it happened was the school I went to, so the high school I went to, it was better than any other school I could have gone to, really, in my own area, in my own neighbourhood. And they would have, different people, different companies and careers come in and speak to us as a school. And someone came in from the advertising school I went to, obviously trying to get students. And I hadn't even thought of it. I hadn't even thought that I could have a creative career, and it just blew my mind. I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I've always been creative. I always loved making things as a child. And I was like, well, that's it then. So,
are you quite instinctive?
Yes.
You trust your gut?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And kind of that's how I started off. And then, yes, went to college. And then by the time I graduated, I had my first job in Cape Town in a tiny design studio. That was a lot of fun.
How did you decide on that studio to work?
Well, to be honest, it was I was fresh out of college, and they were the first ones that offered me a job, so I took it, and it seemed fun. It was this tiny screen printing studio, and I got to do really fun things like design surfboards, designs that went onto surfboards, and kind of the surf community in Cape Town, they would have kind of really cool stickers on the back of their cars and so on. I got to design some of those. So there were some really fun projects, and it was a great kind of starter position because it had this print studio attached, and so I could see what I was designing actually physically coming off of the printers.
Is that important?
And that was quite exciting.
Okay.
And also gave me a really good knowledge of print, which I then kind of carried forward with me into my other jobs.
And you like to be part of the whole process.
I do like to be a part of the whole process, yeah. And again, it comes back to the making and kind of designing something and seeing it come out as a product or as a finished print. I like the completeness of that process.
Why do you think you're a good graphic designer, or not?
Maybe not. I think, first of all, it was learning the technical stuff. So I think I got really good at knowing the technical side of design, of which there is a lot. You got to know the programs, you've got to know how the print presses work, you've got to know about colours, all of those things. So that's kind of the basics. And then from there, I think it's almost like what I do now. It's listening. It's kind of knowing what the client is asking for, getting the kind of feel of what they want their brand to portray or what they want their logo to portray and to look like. And a lot of it is just kind of getting into people's heads and also trying to start to think like they think, so that whatever you produce, you almost know before you present it to them that they're going to love it.
Because it seems quite diverse. So to be able, for me to think about designing a surfboard, I wouldn't have a clue.
The surfboards were easier because there were lots out there and you could see what surfers liked. And at that point in time, there was a particular style or particular design. And so that was kind of, it was easy to see what people would like. There weren't as many options. So the surfboard design wasn't, I would say, the most challenging part of my career so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 16 years under your belt. What was your greatest graphic design accomplishment?
Oh, my goodness. I don't think I've got any one thing in particular. I enjoyed my career as a designer, I would say, rather than I could pick any particular piece of design out. I enjoyed working with the various people I worked with. I've met many lovely, lovely people here in the UK in the studios I've worked in. I enjoyed working coming from Cape Town and then coming to work in London. And I worked kind of out in Southgate for a while, but then I got this job right in the city, which I loved. I loved being able to kind of put my high heels on and go into the city and work there and experience that culture. When really at the time it was quite hedonistic, it was kind of drinks after work every day and, pubs and bars and client lunches. And it was really, really fun. And I think I will always remember my graphic design days and kind of in that way of like the entire experience.
And then, am I right in saying that your transition from graphic designer to interior designer came about through your self-renovation project?
Yes. So what happened is actually we self-built our own house. So we built it from the ground up in North London, my husband and I. And we started this process because we lived in a flat in Crouch End. And we'd had our first daughter and the flat was too small. And at that point, it was kind of a peak of the property market. And then although we sold our flat for a really good price, we couldn't then make that next step up to a family home. And just at the end of the road that we lived on at the time, a couple and their two daughters had built their own house out of some derelict garages. And I'd walk past it every day and I said to my husband, I bet we could do that. And he's just as mad as I am. So he said, I bet we could. And so we started just looking for land, actively looking for land and, just walking around the area, finding little pockets of land, looking on the land registry website, and then just really naively writing to people saying, can we buy your land?
So when did you start your land search?
So that must have been around 2014, I would if my memory serves me correctly.
And you were still working as a graphic designer?
I was still working as a graphic designer then, yes.
In the UK now?
Yes. And we'd go around and we tried for about a year. Nothing came of it. Writing to people via the land registry. And then my husband went out running one night and saw this garage and looked it up on the land registry and wrote them a letter, as we had been doing. And someone wrote back saying, the garage isn't ours, but we do have a plot of land right next door to it.
No, that is amazing.
And it was just kind of a
random,
really random. And we got talking to them, kind of a elderly couple, but she was a writer, really fabulous, and we started the conversation, and they were at that point in their lives where they were ready to sell, and so we started the long legal process of it all.
What was the land like? I mean, so you went and had a look at it, and you signed it all off, and you thought this will be the right place for my family home.
Yeah, so the area was great. It was a little bit towards kind of Highgate side, and we were initially in Crouch End, as I said, but it was basically their garden had run from the one street all the way across to the parallel street behind it.
So it was a long rectangle.
So it was a long rectangle of land with a slope to it as well. So it was quite a project. But that's how it all started.
Quite a project in terms of what? In terms of the landscape, or the shape of the land, or
everything really. I mean, the legal process was surprisingly long, and we wanted to get planning permission before we bought it, so that was unusual. People don't usually do it that way. And then yes, the plot itself sloped down, so there was a lot of excavation, lots of kind of foundation work that needed to be done. But we worked with some great architects, and I just loved the process so much. And that's when I started writing about it, when I started the blog and started writing about the process of building. And that kind of kicked off the change of career for me as well.
Interesting. So you left a graphic design job to write a blog initially, and then start your self-build project?
I was still at the graphic design job while I started the blog. So it was just something I did on the side to document the house build. And when the blog started going, I had my first daughter. I started to find it a bit tricky, as most mums do, coming up against some issues with being a mother and trying to hold down a job in the city at the same time, and all the issues that come along with that, as you can imagine. And I started to become a little bit unhappy in that position. And so when the blog kind of started taking off a bit, I decided that I would just take the leap and see where it took me, and decided to leave. See, that's where your courage and bravery that you learned as a child possibly came in. Yeah.
And also using your gut instinct. Now, it's for many people, it's a dream to think about building their own home. Can you share with us any key learnings from that experience?
I can. It was quite an experience. It was very challenging. It took a lot longer than we expected. So I would say, if you wanted to do it yourself, just be prepared for all of those things. Be prepared that, the legal process takes a long time, sometimes a couple of years. The planning process takes a long time, sometimes a couple of years. And then, of course, as I've learned, simple things like trying to find the builder, trying to find the right builder for the job can take a long time. Trying to find the right architect can take a long time. So I think, if you're just aware that it's not kind of find the land, get an architect and get planning and it goes up. There's so many things to consider, and also, you know, there are other things that we didn't even think of, you know, like kind of extra taxes and so on you have to pay when you're building. There are various kind of penalties, the cost of all the different kind of tests and professionals. So there is so much to it that I think we didn't even know about, and you possibly, if we'd known about it before, we may not have even have done it. But it was definitely an experience, and it is something that we've done now that we're very proud of, and that's changed my career really. So
I'm interested. I've seen pictures of your home and it looks splendid, and I want to talk about that in a minute. Another question. So for anybody thinking about changing careers, what would you say have been your transferable skills that you were able to take from your experience as a graphic designer into your experience now as a design consultant?
So I would say actually there are lots of transferable skills I found. There's obviously the practical side of things. So being able to already use some of the software I was using for design, to be able to use those to draw floor plans and your 3D models and all of those. Being able to use Photoshop. So all of that was a real benefit. In terms of working with clients, I mean, it's, to me, I almost see it as the same thing, where you're trying to, you're getting the brief, you're trying to get inside the client's head to find out what they want. You need to, I mean, with graphic design it's a bit different, but with the space, you want to know how they're going to use the space, how you can make it more functional for them and work the best that it can for them. And then of course there's the nice bits, like the decoration bits. So trying to find out which colors they like and in materials, and so you can give them their kind of dream home.
Why do you think that you have been able to now create South Place Studio, a successful design consultancy business? What makes you a great interior designer?
I think it's just slowly developed, and I think it's also because I hopefully listen to my clients, and I feel like I kind of put them at the center and really try and find out at the beginning of a project what they want from their space. And, you know, our philosophy is to create these spaces that make people's lives easier. So you want good storage, you want materials that wear well over time, you want, you know, things that are easy to clean. So all of those really practical things, at the end of the day, when you're living in a space, they really matter. And it does give people, I know because I've done it for myself, it gives you the kind of the free time you need to do the other things in life when your home is this framework that just supports the way you live, and there's a place for everything, and everyone has their own kind of space and their own zones, and everybody knows where everything is. So
it's so remedial, isn't it? Because I feel that sometimes we make do with our life instead of adopting your approach, actually making life work for us.
Yes.
I see in your kitchen that you put your fabulous central island on wheels, which I love, because I see that you like socialising, so you're able to move it aside.
Yes.
And you have groups of friends around.
Exactly. Just having the kind of the option, we don't move it that often, but just having the option to move it slightly when you need to, when you have lots of people over, it's it is good to have, and those are the kinds of things I try and think about with clients as well. Is kind of what will be flexible for them,
yes,
what doesn't really tie them down, or how can their home kind of grow with them as they progress or their family grows.
How does design work for you? I love that. Yes. I love that. And Rockett St George. Oh my goodness. I mean,
I know.
What a great collaboration.
I know.
I mean, they are the coolest.
They are brilliant. So lovely to work with.
How did this come about? Jane and Lucy.
Yes. So this actually came about, it's a bit of a long story, but it came about, strangely enough, after the killing of George Floyd, there was suddenly this space opened up where we all felt a little bit more comfortable talking about our experiences. And Kate Watson-Smythe and Sophie Robinson have a podcast called The Great Indoors. And on this podcast, they had been talking to various designers of colour about their experience in the design industry and the lack of diversity. So they had lots of people on. And I can't remember if it was from that particular show or the one immediately afterwards. They also started talking about brands who would be happy to collaborate or start talking to designers, just to kind of give us a bit more exposure. And Rockett St George was one of those brands. And so I just contacted them on Instagram, and I just messaged Rockett St George. And they came straight back and said, yes, let's chat. And so I started chatting to them about what my ideas were. And they were just amazing, really open to the ideas, really helpful with what would sell well or a good starting point.
What were your ideas?
Oh, I had lots of ideas, maybe a bit too overambitious. I had lighting ideas. I had furniture ideas.
Never too ambitious. Remember what your mum said. Remember what your mum says. You can do anything. You got to believe in yourself.
So anyway, we started here, and
so you started with the print.
Yes,
and you
decided
have 4.
that prints would be a good place to start, and then I designed them from there. So I thought about what I would like these prints to be, what I would like them to represent, and because of that feeling at the moment, and because of how the conversation came about, and because of my history in South Africa, that was all kind of fresh in my mind at that point. And I think that's why I focus so much on Africa, using the continent, using these kind of silhouettes and profiles of kind of strong women.
You are so smart. And one of the many things that I admire about you is that you have used your life journey and all of the different aspects that you've learned or that you've experienced, and you've managed to incorporate them. It was almost like a breadcrumb trail into current day situation.
Yes, I mean, and I hope to continue, really. It's I think change is so important, and I think the better we all get at dealing with change, the better we'll all be, because nothing stays the same for very long. And if it's, just one of the most important things I can teach to my daughters is that, you've got to be agile and flexible. You can't expect that everything stays the same for too long. Gone are the days where you can get a job and stay in it for years and years. Everything is changing so fast. And so I love kind of just experimenting and doing different things and growing the studio in little unexpected ways. And so I do hope to keep going that way.
That's one of Martin Luther King's quotes, I think. One of the biggest killers of humans is their inability to adapt to change.
Yes.
Watch this space. Tash South, superstar. Thank you for coming on the Designerati podcast today. It's my pleasure to interview you. You're a wonderful lady. Keep going.
Oh, thank you. It's an honour to be here.
Thank you, Tash. Now, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please do like and subscribe, and join me here every Monday in the Designerati podcast studio, where we'll be challenging design perspectives with more amazing interior people, architects from all around the world. See you then.